Hello. So, this isn't what I originally said I was going to be posting. Um, but a lot's happened in the last few months. Um, basically since I posted the last video. And I've talked to a lot of people. And as much as I want to continue to do um, tabletop things, it takes a whole lot more work. And right now I don't have the energy. Um, and I also talked. And one of the other things that I talked about with several other people is, I don't know, finding something. I think I'm going to kind of use this channel kind of to record my journey. Because I'm kind of starting from scratch. Um, not really working anywhere right now. The last job was absolutely terrible. And due to that, and a lot of other things going on in my life right now, I'm kind of scared to start over, try again. Um, and I've always wanted to do something with my voice, be it YouTube or acting or vocals. Um, those of you that know me in real life, which is probably most of you, if not all of you, know that I actually went to school for music. Um, and I thought it was what I wanted to do. And in a way, it was. Um, but it didn't feel right the way that I was doing it. Uh, one of the things is I have a really low voice naturally. I don't have any voice changers on. I mean, I don't have the best quality microphone or the best quality camera, but this is my voice. Um, and in a way, I'm kind of proud of it. Um, when I was younger, I was a late bloomer. It took a long time for my deeper voice to come in, and I got picked on for it all the time. And it hurt. And so when my voice finally got deeper, it was different. Um, and it kind of felt like it was important because everyone made such a big deal of it. And now that my voice is this low, I didn't want to waste it. Um, and when I went to school, they didn't utilize it. One thing I was told was like, I have a pretty large vocal range, but I'm more interested in perfecting my lower voice because it's been gifted to me. I want to make the most of it. Uh, and they weren't basically told me that that's not really what the general populace wants. That I need to learn to use my falsetto because that's what I'll be using most in music. And then also just the fact that they were pushing everyone more to be a teacher than performance or anything like that. And the school doesn't have any sort of acting anymore, let alone voice acting. And I was like, well, what's the point of being here if they're not even going to use my talents and teach me what I want to be taught? And I was wasting so much money just by being there. I quit. Um, and then, so I was home for a few months. I quit after one semester, so it was around Christmas time. And no one was really hiring because they were had a whole lot more staff because of the holiday season and stuff like that. So now I've been trying to work ever since, and just because I felt like I needed to, I just paid more attention to getting money in my pocket than actually doing what I wanted to do and figuring out who I am. And I started working food service at the local college, and it wasn't too bad because I still got to talk to a lot of people around my age, but I kind of felt like they were taking advantage of my time. Um, they made me work overtime, which I was okay with because I was getting paid more. And they were making me learn to do basically everything there, which was cool. I like learning new things. Um, but when COVID hit, they just sent me home. Um, and so then I was off for a couple months. But they also do that for the summers, and I wasn't too worried. I just started, so I didn't really feel like I deserved much more. I was like, I'm the new guy. Cut the new guy. It makes sense. Um, but when we finally went back, they were they were again giving me overtime and making me learn more and more. And it got to the point that I was there all the time. I was there 9 hours a day, at least 5 days a week, at least. Um, and at first, like I brought it up, I was like, hey, because they kind of make a big deal about overtime because they don't really like to pay anyone. It all goes into my boss's pocket. Um, and so I was like, hey, is this supposed to happen? And they were like, oh, no, no, that's not supposed to happen. We'll get it fixed. And it never did. And I was getting paid, so I didn't really care. Um, but then later on, we had like an extended break for Christmas due to COVID. They didn't want people to go home for Thanksgiving, come back with COVID. So from like Thanksgiving through Christmas, we were just off for like 2 months. Um, and again, I wasn't getting paid. And I was like, shouldn't I at least get unemployment? That was a hassle. The answer was no. Um, I qualified, but I also didn't qualify, and it made no sense to me. But I was like, they understand it more than me. The government understands it more than me. Whatever. Um, we went back February. Well, we went back, I think, at the end of January. But in February, uh, on Valentine's Day, I uh, was sledding, and I wrecked the sled and screwed up my leg. It hurt incredibly, but because of how bad I messed it up, I was out of work for a few weeks. Um, and I tried to be as open with them. I can't remember if I called them on the way to the hospital. I think it was actually on the way home from the hospital. I called them, and I was keeping them up. As soon as I would get new information, I was giving it to them. Um, and I don't know, they were just incredibly rude the whole time. Like it was my fault, and I was like, yeah, I went sledding, but I've been sledding since I was a kid and never had an issue. But anyway, I went back after I started to feel better, and oh yeah, there was also times where like I told them like because they were complaining that I wasn't coming in, and I told them at one point I was like, hey, I can stand, but it's still kind of sore. I can't walk a whole lot, but I can come in and do simple stuff. I can stand the cash register, which is one of the things I did anyway when I was working at this like knockoff Subway. They wouldn't have it. It had nothing to do with it. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll come in when I'm 100% good. And I was at one point I was like 98%. Like it was still really sore and I couldn't run, but like I could walk pretty quickly. I went back, um, and it was all right for like a week, and then they cut my hours drastically. And I found out it was because we were going on summer break again, and they switched me to part time so I wouldn't get paid over summer. Uh, and that sucked. I was pretty mad because I'd been there over a year now, um, and I was doing everything I could. Uh, and so I looked for other jobs. And I found another one, half an hour from where I live. Uh, it looked like it was going to be good. They were going to show me, like, it was a, when I applied, it said it was an apprentice mechanic job. And I'm not, like, hugely interested in that, but I, at that point, had given up on following my dreams. And I was like, cars aren't too bad. I mean, I enjoy cars. I'm a Subaru guy myself. I like the old Imprezas and WRXs, even though the first generation you couldn't get the WRX in the United States. That's neither here nor there. But I was excited to learn because I like to be able to do things, and I figured it would be a job that would be pretty sustainable. I mean, I would get paid a decent amount, and we're always going to have mechanics now that we always have cars. So I was excited for that. I also had a whole lot of similar beliefs when I talked to uh, the boss, and I was excited at first. Um, it was pretty good for like 2 weeks, and then they started having me do all kinds of weird stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm the new guy. You always have the new guy do weird stuff. But I was like going to my boss's house and like his neighbors and random relatives and just doing all kinds of random stuff. And then they like told me they're like, "Oh, well, we actually hired you for a maintenance position." And I was like, "Well, that wasn't what I wanted to do." I was like, "But again, I'm willing to learn." Um, and they paid really well. Paid a whole lot better than my old job. With my oh yeah, my first job also gave me a 5 cent raise when I said I was leaving, and that's not enough. Um, but again, I was still hopeful for that first job. I mean, that second job, the one that was half an hour away. And after the first few weeks, I was spending less and less time in the garage and more time just doing random stuff. Like, I was taking down a fence, I was putting up a fence at a different place, uh, mowing and weeding, which is okay, whatever. And then clearing the trees up and behind their house, uh, taking down his daughter's porch, um, putting in lights, putting in insulation, and none of it was done the way it was supposed to be done. Um, and at one point, I ended up getting sick from inhaling all kinds of stuff because we didn't have any sort of masks or breathing or anything. Yeah, no masks during COVID too. Um, and they basically were ragging on me the whole time, calling me weak because I got sick over it. But it like screwed up my nose and my lungs and everything. It was only a couple days, but that was kind of worrying. I came back in, and things really went downhill starting from there. Um, they at one point, um, like I was weed eating and ticked off a whole bee's nest and was covered head to toe in stings. I'm not allergic, but it still hurts. It's not a pleasant experience, and I stopped for a couple minutes to just because I mean, you also the adrenaline's rushing through you each time you get stung, and so I was not feeling good, and they were just ragging on me, making fun of me the whole time for having to stop for it. And then uh, they just kept ragging on me about different things. Like I was going through a lot of stuff at home, um, and I don't know. I felt like I could trust my boss, so I kind of let him know what was going on. I was like, "Hey, this is affecting me. It's going to affect my work." And then he would use that to attack me a lot. Um, and so then I was like, "This isn't right. I need to find another job." And I started looking, but I didn't really want to go back to fast food. I was like, "Well, what do I want to do?" And I looked, and then I ended up at one point getting COVID, which was interesting because the only thing I was really doing at the time was going to work. And most of it was alone. I would come in and we had the old punch cards that were actually physically punched in. Um, and then most of the time I was alone, but somehow I still got sick. Um, and my family didn't. But it wasn't the end of the world. I mean, it sucked. Getting sick does. In the first couple of weeks, I just couldn't. I mean, the first week, I just really couldn't do anything. But at the end of the 2 weeks, I was still kind of hazy, and bleh. But uh, I was able to work, and I called work. And I was like, "Hey, I'm allowed to come back in. I'm still kind of sick, but I'm no longer contagious. At least that's what they were saying at the time." Um, and it was, and I was like, "But I can come in. It's not going to be like where I was when I left, but it'll be better than nothing." And so they had me come in, and nothing was done while I was gone. It was a mess to catch up. Um, and they were complaining about me not getting as much done the first few days. And I was like, I'm literally still sick, but I need to get paid, and I'm here. And they were constantly they're like the first day they would just complain the next day, but the next day my boss was standing next to me the whole day, and the whole day was just completely belittling me the whole time, bringing up the issues at home and just being incredibly rude. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm finding another job. And I got to the point that I was like, I was sick and I was being belittled the whole time, and I was telling everyone around me, I was like, I need to get out of here, and everyone was telling me, they're like, oh, you need to get paid, find another job first. And so I was trying to do that, and it was about another week or two after I came back from being sick, and there was a day where they had me crawling into this crawl space to put in the insulation underneath the house of my boss's daughter. And uh, I told them beforehand, like, because they sent me under there once for something, and I come back out, and the whole thing's just infested with spiders, like really, really bad. And one thing I'm absolutely terrified of is spiders. And so I had told them, I was like, look, if that's not something that I'm comfortable with, and I like let them know way ahead of time. Um, oh yeah, and they also had me painting, and I'm terrible at painting, and I told them that ahead of time. But that was that was my first half, that it was painting, and then they were complaining about it, and I told you it was going to be like this. I'm also sick, because that like after COVID haziness was like a month, not fun. I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, they had me doing insulation under there, and I was like, I told them before I left, I was like, hey, I'm absolutely terrified of spiders, but if you really want me to do it, I'll give it a shot. And I was down there for a little bit, and I was kind of scared, working my way underneath. And I know it's silly. Spiders really won't do that much to you, but when I was younger, one bit me, and I freaked out, and now I always freak out. And while I was under there, tripped and stumbled and stuck my hand out and stuck it through spider webs, and a big spider came crawling out, and I freaked out. So I like brushed it off, and I went running out, and I'm like laying on the ground, breathing really hard, partially because I'm still sick, and so I'm having issues breathing anyway. Um, but then also because I was panicking. Um, and I called him, and I was like, "Hey man, I just freaked out under there." And I said, "Is there anything else you can have me do? I would rather do anything else, but please don't put me in that crawl space." And he told me, he was like, "No, you're gonna get it done, and it's gonna be done by the end of the day." And I had like 2 hours left to do this whole house, and I was like, "There is no way I'm getting it done." And he's like, "No, you're getting it done," and hung up. And I was like, "Whatever." So I tried again, but because I had already stuck my hand in a web and had a spider crawling on me, because that's the thing. Once they touch me is when I'm done. I was freaking out going back in, and I called him back um, after trying a couple times to go in, and I would get in and freak out and run back out, and then I would calm down and go in, and just like that, back and forth a couple times. And I called him back, and I was like, "Look, literally anything else, I'm not going under there." Um, and he said, "Well, I'll be up there in a bit. You just stay right there." And I was like, "Great, now I get to hear from him again." Um, and so I waited, and it was like half an hour, and he showed up, and he was like, "Well, how long have you been sitting here being doing nothing?" And I was like, "Since you told me to." Uh, and he was like yelling and screaming, "Well, now I have to do this myself. You really screwed me over," and yada yada yada. And I told you ahead of time. I told you ahead of time this is something I wasn't comfortable with doing. I said I would give it a shot, but I'm not comfortable with doing it. And eventually, he just told me to start weed eating around his daughter's house, and I went to do that. And the dog was still out, and I asked him where he would like me to put the dog, because usually his daughter's house is locked while she's working. And so then he freaked out again, and he was like, "You can't do anything yourself." And I was like, "The house is locked. Where do you want me to put the dog?" Um, and so then he told me to just mow in behind the house. So I mowed in behind the house. I mean, weed eated. It was already mowed. Um, and then at the end of the day, uh, I told him, "Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow." Because I always try to be really polite, even if they're miserable, because I know sometimes people are miserable because of the things they're going through. And I also Oh no, I've been going through a lot recently, and I don't like to be mean anymore. So yeah, I told him I was really polite and told him I was like, "Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow." Um, and I left and punched out and went home. Um, and the next day we came in and he was waiting at the time clock when I punched in. And he said, "You're coming with me." I was like, "Okay." He would have me ride with him to go do different random things, um, like going to Lowe's and stuff like that, and picking up lumber because he's older. So he usually would have me help with that. Um, so I was like, "Okay, sure." And I went, and I was basically just hoping that he wouldn't bring it up again, but I had a feeling he would. But he didn't. That trip, we went and got whatever he needed. I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but it was a good like hour, 2 hours. Um, but then when we got out of the car, when I got out of the car, he dropped me off at my car, and he said that he was going to run somewhere. And he was like, "I need you to mow my yard, my son's yard, my mother's yard, and the fields." And I was like, "Okay, yep. I'll get as much done as I can a day because that takes a couple days, even though they say it only takes a day." It was like you're having me ride this really fancy riding mower, and I have it pegged the whole time, and it doesn't get it done. So it physically cannot be done any faster. Um, but uh, as I got my keys out, went to unlock my car, he said, "What are we gonna do about yesterday?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I don't pay people to sit on their butt." And I said, "Okay." And I turned around and get back in the car, and he was like, "So how long were you sitting on your butt?" And I said, "Well, I worked from uh, 8 to 4, which is when we work." I said, "The only exception was when I took half an hour lunch break, which is paid." And I said, "And when you called me and told me to sit and wait." And he said, "Yeah, but that painting should have been done X amount of time." And he said, and you didn't finish the insulation." And I was like, "Both of those things are things that I've told you since you mentioned I might be doing them." And I said, "I told you I'm not very good at painting, but if you need it done, I'll do my best." And I said, "And I'm absolutely terrified of spiders, and I don't want to be under that crawl space, and I would avoid it at all costs." Um, and he was like, "But you didn't do anything." And I said, "You not having anything else for me to do isn't my fault." I said, "I worked for 8 hours. If you didn't like the quality of it, then that's a discussion that we can have. But I worked. I should get paid for that." Um, uh, and I can't remember what he said, but we argued back and forth for a bit. And he said, "Well, do you really think you deserve to get paid?" And I said, "Yes, I worked 8 hours. I should get paid 8 hours. That was what we agreed with when I started working here. I made X an hour. I was here at Y hours. I get paid X times Y, and then you guys figure out all the taxes that you have to take out of that and everything like that." Um, and uh, and he was like, "Do you really think that?" And I was like, "Look, I don't work for free." And I said, "If you're not paying me, I'm going home. And then you have my cell phone number. You can call me. We can figure this out some other time. But I'm going home today." Um, and he said, "Are you quitting?" I said, "Am I getting paid?" And he said, "I'm your boss. I ask the questions." And I said, "You being my boss is determined entirely by whether or not you pay me." Um, and he was like, "Do you really think you deserve it?" And I said, "I've already answered that question. I'm putting my stuff by the time clock. I'm going home. Call me if you want to fix this." And he started flipping out at me, and so I left. I punched out. I set his stuff by the time clock, and I went home. And I didn't know if that was the right response, but the more I look at it, I realize it was. And the sad thing is, the guy wasn't always like that. When I first started, he wasn't too bad. Um, and I hope that whoever he hires next, oh yeah, I hope whoever he hires next, he's better too. Um, I know he won't because I made friendships. I always make friendships when I go places. I'm a friendly person. And I went and I talked to some of those people a few different times since I quit, and they said that uh, he does it all the time. He tricks people into thinking they're in other positions, and then basically has them be his servant, um, and then treats them like garbage until they leave. And they say it's a shame because they've gone through a lot of really good people. Um, yeah, so I'm glad I left, but it hurt, and it also hurt that when I went home, a lot of people close to me kind of made it seem like I overacted and I should have had another job lined up. And I shouldn't have to go through that, and no one should. Um, and so because of that, now I have no job, no income, and honestly, no happiness. Um, Struggling a lot, but and not just from that one situation. That's just the one that only really affects me. So that's the one I can share. Um, but I've talked to a lot of people, and they said that I need an outlet, and so I'm going to use this. Oh yeah, sorry, I had mentioned the next person. I kind of laughed. Like the next day after I picked up my last paycheck, I saw my job posted, and I was like, "I'm sorry, that's ridiculous." But yeah, that's why I made this video. I hope to start posting things. Uh, I don't know what yet, and I never knew. I've restarted this channel like 4 different times, and I'm keeping the old video up. I'm probably going to change the description, but I'm keeping it up. And I might even bring back my old videos, um, because this is just kind of like a record of my life. Um, and here's hoping it gets better. And I hope that you guys are here with me. It's hard to do things alone, and I think all of us know that, even if we don't want to admit it. And I'm hoping that by getting the words out and putting them digital, that maybe it will make it easier to share in person, or maybe they'll even find it here first, and then they'll just talk to me, because really that's what I need. Um, yeah, but just some random different things that I've talked about recently with some friends. Um, One that I feel like is really important and why I've started doing this. I don't think he even realizes how important it was when he said it. Um, but after a little bit of time being here, um, not really having a goal, I decided I wanted to try voice again. And I kind of mentioned it lightheartedly um, in a group chat. And one of my friends told me, if you want to stumble into greatness, you have to start stumbling. Um, and that meant a lot because for 2 years I chose to stop stumbling, and I'm a whole lot worse off because of it. I'm not as good at things that I was good at 2 years ago because I gave up, and I wish I didn't. And so this is kind of a video. If anyone watches it all the way through, don't give up. Uh, don't don't push yourself through things that you don't want to go through because someone else wants you to. Um, and I don't feel like I should have stuck in school. Um, and so, because that's another thing I don't feel like I should have been stuck in. But I do wish that I kept trying something else, or maybe it's a different school. I don't know. Um, but don't give up. Keep stumbling. If you haven't started stumbling, start stumbling. And you're not alone. And I know I'm not. Um, it's been really hard, but I've talked to a lot of a lot of good people, a lot of people I haven't talked to in years. And it was weird. It was just like they knew when I was hurting the most, when getting out of bed took all my energy, or getting a shower, or eating. I got some messages from old friends that I've not talked to in forever. And they were just so kind. And it was good to get things off my chest. And every time I talk about it, it feels a little bit better. So thank you. Thank you for making it not as alone for all of you that I've talked to and any of you have sat through this video. Even if I don't know you, thank you. You're here and you listened. Um, and I hope you all know that when you guys are struggling, or girls, that I'm here too. Um, we only get through things by going through them together. So thank you for listening, and I hope you come back for whatever journey I have ahead of me, because I'm gonna keep posting this time. I'm not giving up. Not this time. Even if it's nothing big, I'm keeping record of what goes on this channel, and hopefully I'll get to do some tabletop things, some games, maybe some singing, some vocal things. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to see who comes with me.